Okay, we're recording. So, welcome everybody. Let's see. So, it looks like I have 4 of you so far. We'll see if more people will trickle in. Can I just get one final confirmation that you guys can hear me? Like, just type in the chat box, yes, I can hear you, so I'm not talking to midair. Okay, awesome. Yes. Okay. Okay, we're rolling. So, really fast, I don't want to spend a lot of time up front with introductions and stuff, but just briefly, in case any of you don't really know who I am, I'll just briefly introduce myself. So my name is Sarah Cook, and I teach both independent study, and I'll also be teaching your senior seminar class for you. And I am an ND, a naturopathic doctor. I do not currently practice. I actually work as a freelance medical writer. So that is a good reason why I'm teaching you the course on how to write a paper. I've been doing medical writing for over 2 to 3 years now. And I've been working with NTI for a very long time, since probably 2006, in a variety of capacities. So that is my quick story in a nutshell. And I have 4 others of you here. What I'd love to do, just very briefly, I'm gonna go through each of you, and if you can just say your name and tell us what the topic of your paper is. I think all of you have submitted topics. So here, I will unmute you guys. You make sure you're unmuted if you're going to talk. So Andrea or Andrea. Oh, you're the only one only one muted. So we'll start with Antonella. So Antonella.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Antonella. So tell us what is the topic of your paper?
Mine is on dental health and nutrition, how they play with each other and the rest of the body.
Great. Okay. Dental health. So Kim, tell us your topic. Okay, or type it if we can't hear you. Okay, so maybe not Kim. We'll come back. Mirka, can you tell us your topic?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Can nutrition with specific nutrients reduce stress effects on the body in endurance athletes?
Great. Okay. And then, Andrea, are you with us? Maybe you could just type your topic in the chat box if, oh, there you are.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay,
Yeah.
I unmuted myself.
Okay.
Yeah, so my topic is about how diet changes as your hormones change going into perimenopause and menopause.
Awesome. Okay. And so Kim is the last one. Are you still there, Kim?
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I can't. It's on gut dysbiosis and how it affects growth stature.
Awesome. Okay. Cool. So, all of you have your topics. I'm not going to obviously spend much time talking about choosing your topic. So we can move into some things that I hope are going to be really helpful. The reason I wanted to be online is because I'm going to be sharing my screen with you, and we're going to go through some exercises that I want you to really do with me at the same time. We're going to be searching for references on PubMed and doing some kind of interactive stuff. So I have this PowerPoint up here, but I'm not going to really rely on it too much. I'm just going to use it as kind of a brief guide. And then definitely I want to make sure that I have time to answer any of your questions before we're done as well. So I'm just going to kind of fly through a couple of these slides, not spend a lot of time. In fact, I'm just going to jump right into so identifying your audience. This is worth just mentioning at any stage of your project. So All of you obviously need to identify your audience initially when you choose your topic, but I just kind of want to emphasize the importance of this and how important it is to keep in mind who your audience is through your entire process of writing. And be as specific as you can about who it is you're writing for. So I just want to give you a really quick story example of something that I've written where probably this is, to my knowledge, the article that probably is the most well-received or most widely read article that I've ever written. And I believe it's because I had in my mind one very specific person I was writing that for, and basically wrote it to that person. So it's just a very short blog article about genetically modified foods, and I titled it Dirtier Than the Dirty Dozen. And I had in my mind, okay, this is going to be for my sister and everybody like my sister who's a mom and cares about the health of her family and knows about the Dirty Dozen and tries to buy organic food, but doesn't have a clue what GMOs are. And if you say it to her, she like blanks over. And so I had that in my mind of like, this is the person I'm writing this for. And I honestly believe that that's the reason it came out as a very readable article that a lot of people wanted to read, because it was speaking to them. And so for any of you, like, I would actually encourage you kind of to do a similar thing where you actually think of a person who fits the mold of the type of person you want to be reaching when you write your paper and then when you present it for your senior seminar. So for example, maybe I'll just ask one of you, like, just for an example, like, if you're able to jump on the audio, Kim, can you kind of maybe explain to us, like, what would the person look like who is your specific target audience? So Kim's doing dysbiosis and growth delay.
Hold on. I can't. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just having a hard time hearing you. So basically, how does dysbiosis affect growth? So I'm looking at probably parents or a coach to notice like the effects of if gut health isn't in prime shape, how detrimental it could be on, going into puberty and the growth hormones and shutting down that whole metabolic pathway.
Right, exactly. So specifically the parents who are dealing with this, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So in any case, again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I do just kind of want to remind you to keep it in mind throughout your whole thing of who it is you're speaking to. And I think that does make a difference in the end as to kind of the readability of your paper and how easy it is for people to read and understand and for people to care about it. So, okay. Any questions about audience before I keep going? Okay, so again, you've all pretty much chosen your topic and we've worked on narrowing them together. I guess one point, again, that I think is worthy of talking about as far as the topic selection, even though you've already all chosen your topic, is that one thing to be really aware of, even as you move forward with outlining and writing your paper, is the importance of keeping to the focus of your topic. So there's a tendency, I think, with nutrition and all of the things that we're learning and all of the resources that are available, that we want to be as comprehensive as we can. And so there's this tendency to want to include as much variety of information as we can. But the problem with that is that what can happen is you'll end up producing a paper that is kind of a laundry list of ideas. Or I use the term a data dump. And I've seen these papers that I would say are a data dump. And what I mean by that is that the student is just trying to cover way too much ground. And by doing that, is not able to give very much detail on anything. And so it becomes, you know, well, I'll pick one of your topics, say, the perimenopause, menopause, I guess, runs the risk of this, right? Where so many things, and you can talk about adrenal health, and you can talk about the digestive health, and you can talk about hormones and detoxification and liver, and then you can talk about all the vitamins and minerals, and then you can talk about all the herbs, and then you can talk about acupuncture, and then you can talk about stress, and you can talk about exercise, and and the problem is, like, okay, yes, all of those things affect menopause. However, it's not helpful just for us to kind of hear them all listed out. And so it's not going to make a good paper if you try to cover too much. And so that's why it's important to narrow your topic from the beginning, but also as you go forward, stick with it and keep coming back to the focus of your topic, so that you don't just end up with a data dump. And so, you know, for perimenopause, menopause, you probably, and I don't remember actually, Andrea, if we've really talked about an angle to take with it or not, but you know, I mean, you could even narrow it even further to say, I'm really going to look at adrenal health and the effect on menopause, and then keep coming back to that as a more narrowed and focused. So anyway, I think as all of you have submitted your topics, I've kind of been back and forth a little bit to make sure you're narrow enough. But this is just kind of a reminder to stick with the focus. And well, any questions on that?
So Sarah, as it relates to that, since you mentioned my topic, so if I focus on diet and exercise as like the two main components,
Yes, I think that would work.
Narrow enough if I kind of focus on those two main things, you know, realizing that there's a lot of other things, but if it's a food focus and then how because of the hormonal change that exercise changes as well.
Yes, I think that would work. Work. And kind of an additional note on this is that the introduction and the conclusion, or the introduction or the conclusion can serve as places where you acknowledge that you're not addressing everything, where, you know, that's where you can just kind of say, look, yeah, there's this whole laundry list of things that can affect how easily women go through menopause. I am in this paper going to discuss these two specific areas. But that's a nice way that you're able to say, look, I know I'm not telling the whole story, but the fact of the matter is I can't tell the whole story in 25 pages. So, and that's really common to do in papers, and you pretty much have to. So, okay. So, okay. So staying focused on your topic. Okay, so now I'm moving on to the next. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I have this great headset and I just lost the speaker piece of it, so I have to just use my computer speakers. So hopefully we're okay. Okay, so moving on. Perusing resources. Okay. So now is when we are going to jump over to the internet, and if you're online, let's go ahead with me to PubMed. Okay. PubMed is not necessarily the place you would initially start. However, because, okay, so where would you initially start? You can initially start with books. A lot of people start with books because you've read a lot of books in your courses and you're familiar with some books about your topic. And books are a great place where You can get an overview of a lot of the ideas to think about. But books are not necessarily your end all be all for references, because in the end you really want to be referencing as much what's called primary research or original research articles, stuff like what you find on PubMed. And I know a lot of people aren't really very familiar with PubMed, which is why we're going to do a little bit with it tonight. So anyway, so you might start with books and you might start with blogs, right? Like Dr. Mercola talks about a lot of interesting topics, maybe related to your subject, or Chris Kresser, or, there's all these blogs where you might kind of get an overview of your subject. But again, those are not necessarily the things you want to reference in your end document. PubMed actually can also be an initial place where you start research. And that's why I'm bringing you here right now when we're just talking about initial perusing the research, okay? So I actually do this a lot of times when students say to me, well, what do you think about the topic of such and such? Is there enough research? I open PubMed and I just put it in and see what research there is. So I'm going to take you through, and I want you to do this with me. Here is an example of a student who came to me and said, I think I want to write about Alzheimer's disease being caused by small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. What do you think? Do you think that's too general? Do you think there's not anything about it? Okay, so Alzheimer's disease and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am actually just going to put both of those search terms into PubMed and see if right off the bat a bunch of stuff comes up or not, okay? So
anyway, it's getting almost bedtime.
Somebody had, oh, I'll mute you guys. Okay. Somebody's child is going to bed. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so when you go to PubMed, you can use, like, I'm going to talk you through kind of the simplest ways to use it. So you're here on the initial, just pubmed.com will take you here, initial search box. So if we want to look for Alzheimer's disease and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So basically, it's very similar to Google. There are a couple of nuances I can tell you about, but we're just going to put in here Alzheimer's disease. Now, what you want to do is when you want to search for two terms together, you do and, but all capital. So there are these two Boolean operators that you should be aware of to use in PubMed, and or. And so usually you'll use and, but it should be all caps. So it knows that it's supposed to look for both these terms together. So Alzheimer's disease, then caps lock and then what are we doing? Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Okay, and then just hit search, return, and see what we get. Okay, so we get one study. So normally this is not what the results look like. Normally the results look like a whole list of a bunch of studies. But in this case, there's not a whole list of a bunch of studies. There's just one that came up. And actually, let's see. Well, it's not really about small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It's about B12 deficiency. Okay. So if you just get one result on your topic, what do you think? Oh, now I muted you all. Do you think that means that your topic is too broad or too narrow or just right?
Too narrow?
Yeah. So usually it means it's too narrow. Now, actually, there is a way that I think this topic could work, but what it would mean would be probably coming up with a bunch of, it'd be a theory. It would be theoretical, and you'd be coming up with a bunch of ideas of, well, here's one way, B12 deficiency, of how these two are related. Now let's think of the other ways and then look up all those different ways. So anyway, I'm not going to get into that. Like, there probably is a way this topic could be doable, but in simplified terms, like if you only come up with one study, your topic's too narrow. So what we can do, and what I would suggest now, just my train of thought of saying, well, how could I maybe come up with something related to this that might be out there, but maybe not so specific. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is related, well, I'll ask you guys, sorry. How could we broaden our search? What word could we broaden our search instead of putting small intestinal bacterial overgrowth? What's a concept that's related to that, but maybe a little bit broader, less specific?
Health of the intestines.
Okay, intestinal health. Okay, maybe what's kind of between those two? What's kind of a concept between intestinal health and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth?
What about gut dysbiosis?
There you go, okay? So dysbiosis. And what I'm actually going to suggest, because just as far as like what we're, well, let's do dysbiosis and see what happens. And then we'll see. Okay, so now we're getting some things. So we got 5. Okay, that's still not a lot. But let's see. Okay, the dormant blood microbiome in chronic inflammatory diseases. Okay. Let's see. Dysbiosis and neuroinflammation. Okay, we're getting there. Stress, depression, cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease. So now I'm seeing another word that might be really a useful search.
Microbiome.
Microbiome. Because, so there's a lot, like there's the Human Microbiome Project that's been going on for, I don't know, the last 8 years or so. And there's getting to be a lot of research on the microbiome, and it's a hot, kind of like a hot word, I think, that might come up better. So we try and microbiome and see if that gets us anywhere. So now we have 32. And so some of these gut microbiome, linking it, the gut-brain axis, okay. What else looks interesting? Microbiome-generated amyloid in Alzheimer's. This is the same one we saw, the microbiome and chronic inflammatory, microbial generated amyloids, Alzheimer's. Role of intestinal microbiota. Okay, so this is looking like, okay, this is doable. There's some stuff here. Okay, so now, that's like the very most basic way to run a search in PubMed is what we're doing right here. Now, there are a couple of additional kind of tricks that I want to show you now. So what I would do next, if I'm at the stage of just perusing and trying to find something that's like broad general information about my topic. So now I think I have some good search terms, Alzheimer's disease and microbiome, but I want to see if there are any review articles. So I don't want to see like a bunch of really specific things. I want to see a review. So, over here on the left-hand side, on the PubMed page are what are called filters. And what you can do is actually just click on one of these and it will filter out these results, these 32 results we have, to only show me the ones that qualify on what I click on. So, for example, I can click on, I want to only see clinical trials. Oh, there are none of them. All right, so I'm going to unclick that. I want to see reviews. And so reviews, so it narrowed it down to 15. But when I look at these, well, let's see. So I don't know, resveratrol, that's not really what I'm looking at. Microbiome, linking microbiome gut-brain axis to pathogenesis of neurodegenerative diseases, a review. Yes. Okay, that looks like a great one to start with if I'm just starting to collect information, right? Like it's a review, it's right on my topic. So let's click on it. Okay, so now the downside is great. Here I am. This looks like a perfect article. I can't get it, right? So full text links. Oh, it says USciences because I was a student there recently, but these are paid. You're going to have to pay $35 to read this article. So that's a bummer. I don't want that. I want to find something I can read the whole thing right now. So let's go over these filters. Do you see any filters over here that would help me find something where I'm going to be able to see the full text?
The free full text.
Let's do that filter too. Okay, so we don't have as many results, but look at them. These are perfect. This is what I want. Here's a review on the dormant blood microbiome and chronic inflammatory disease, the gastrointestinal tract microbiome, and potential link to Alzheimer's disease. Free article review. Let's go to that one. And then these are the PMC full text. That's how you get them free in PubMed. So I'm going to click on that box over there, and it's going to take me to the whole article. I can download the PDF over here. And this is probably a great place to start on my topic, and it's going to give me a lot of overview, and it's going to probably guide me to a lot of other studies related to this. And so, yeah, I'd probably, download this, read through it, and let's see. I'm actually gonna stop there for now, and we're gonna come back to this after I get to kind of a next topic I want to talk about. But for now, those are a couple things I want to talk about, just as far as kind of how to run a basic search on PubMed and how to use the filters. Now, you also, even if you don't have that filter on, like free full text, you can always see here, they say free PMC article. So you can see right there that it's when you're going to be able to get the full text. I certainly do not always use the filter of free full text, because a lot of articles are going to be useful to you, even if you can only read the abstract. So like here, we'll click on this beneficial action of resveratrol. I might be able to read this abstract and actually get enough information that I can reference this in my paper to some extent. But that's not helpful if you want to see a whole review article. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute and see what questions have come up on this. We're okay?
I might have a question about my topic.
Okay.
I kind of don't know exactly what question I would put in search to get some good results.
Okay, so I might need to take more time than I want to take just now to do this, but I mean, so we might just start with endurance athletes. And so you're talking about, well, you're talking about stress response, adrenal.
Yes.
So endurance athletes, I mean, there's a lot of things. You might look up endurance athletes and cortisol. You might look up endurance athletes. Let's just see if anything on like endurance athletes and adrenal comes up with and I'm still have my, you kind of have to be careful when you use these filters, because you might forget that you have it on. So I'm still on a review filter, which is fine. So exercise and the stress system. I mean, these are getting you some things to start with. It's a free article. So that would be one, that would be a place to start. And what happens is kind of like, yeah, like here's one to start with. Read the full text. And then I'm going to get into in a few minutes about kind of how you use these review articles to find other articles. And actually, real fast, since we're here, say this looks like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. What other articles can I find that are similar to this one? Exercise in the stress system. Over here on the right, similar articles. Sometimes this can be really helpful. So here's another review, exercise as a stress model, interplay with, I don't know, hypothalamus, pituitary thyroid axis. There you go. Right? That looks helpful.
Oh, this is wonderful.
Okay. So yeah, that's another thing that's helpful, that similar articles over there. Okay, so start with that. Anybody else? Okay, so did I lose my PowerPoint? Where are we? Let's see. Okay, so I want to let's see what's the next things we want to talk about here. I'll go to back to my slideshow for a second. All right, so that was to talk about perusing resources. That was that diversion. Going from the topic to question, okay, significance. Significance is the other thing. I know you've all answered these questions. You've all seen the answers to your question. But again, just like I wanted to kind of drive into the ground the importance of focusing your topic, I want to drive into the ground the importance of significance. You all should be able to answer the question, why does this matter? Who cares? Why would anybody want to read this? So what? You all should be able to answer that like in your sleep. It should be very easy that you realize why your topic matters. But moving forward, the way that you can use your answer to so what, this should actually come out in your final paper. And the best place that it should be included in your final paper is definitely somewhere in your introduction. It might be repeated in your conclusion, but definitely somewhere in your introduction, or really your whole introduction can kind of lead up to this. Basically, you need to convince your reader that what you're about to talk about matters to them and they should keep reading. And so whatever the answer or answers are to why your topic matters, that should be, it should come out in your introduction to some extent. Because basically you shouldn't assume that everyone cares about dysbiosis and growth stature. They might not have a clue what that is or why they should read about it. Just like my article on GMOs, like I could say to my sister, like, you really shouldn't be giving your kids that because it has GMOs in it. And she'll blank stare at me and not care because she doesn't know what it means, right? So I have to somehow set the stage and explain to her, why does this matter to you? And then she's going to be willing to listen to my explanation. So, does anybody want to tell us their so what? How about Antonella? You love how I randomly call on you guys? There's only 4 of you.
Yeah. My so what is, well, I'm not sure how to state it, because I'll be honest, like my topic started because of my son keeps getting cavities and he has some digestive issues. Okay. And the dentist will not recognize that it can have anything to do with it. So I kind of wanted to search more into it for my own reasons, but then I figured there are many other kids out there that, aside from, cleaning their teeth and all of that, is or eating sugar, it's not as simple as that, in my opinion. I mean, I have 4 children, and he's the only one who's getting cavities. So, so that's somehow, right. I feel like I need to make that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of times part of the so what is going to be part of the so what a lot of times is basic statistics, that just saying like, look, this is how many kids have cavities and this is how many kids have multiple cavities, and and this is how kind of even somehow expressing like, this is how having a lot of cavities is like traumatic for kids, or they're always scared to go to the dentist, and what are the parents don't know what to do. And here I'm going to present kind of this new idea that nobody really talks about, but it really could actually help your kids stop having cavities, So it's that kind of thing. Actually, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the general idea of just making a case for yourself, like, this matters. So
yeah.
Okay. All right. So that'll should come up in your introduction, and that's why we talk about that. Okay. Moving on. Okay. So I'm gonna go on to talk about a little bit more about the resources, and I think your book uses the term following the bibliographic trail, and I I use that term now, and I'm always like saying that to every student 100 times. And then I find I'm still writing it on their final research paper. You need to follow the bibliographic trail. So let's talk about that. What that means is that what I want you to do in a research paper is cite as close to the source of original information as you possibly can. So this slide here, slide 16, says, it defines like the primary source, secondary source, tertiary source. And I don't care if you like, and actually it's described differently of what's primary, secondary, tertiary, but the idea is that, so yeah, this slide says primary is like your own research, okay? But you guys are not actually required to do your own research for these papers, so you may or may not have that. Some people do actually kind of in their introduction might include a brief personal story about why this is relevant to them. And some people do include case studies within their paper to kind of explain more practical application of where they have seen this in real clients. And so that would be considered, according to this slide, it would be considered a primary source. But you actually don't have to have anything like that. And usually what I refer to as primary is what they call secondary on this slide. So that's why I say it doesn't technically matter the actual term you use, but the concept does matter. So as they define secondary source, I usually call it primary. Those are like the original research studies. So, oh, I can't close that thing. Studies done by researchers in the field. These are things that are, mostly these are the studies you will find on PubMed, although really these would not be the review articles you find on PubMed. These would be the really clinical trials or kind of the basic science studies would be this category, which I call it original research. So that's like top of the line, like cite as much of that as you can. We're going to go back into PubMed so I can explain to you a little bit more practically. And then what's listed as tertiary source on this slide, this is either books, blogs, websites, and actually even the review articles that we were just finding on PubMed, I would put into this category that they're review articles, and so they're technically secondary sources of information, so because they're summarizing all the original research. And so basically all of these things are okay to cite in your paper. However, the ones that here are listed as secondary are really the ones that you want to heavily load on. I mean, don't turn in a paper that has no original research studies. Don't turn in a paper where all of the citations are blog articles and books, because I have seen that happen, and I will not give an A to someone who does that, because that's not actually digging up the research yourself. That's just summarizing what somebody else has already summarized for you. So this is like a huge warning sign that I just cannot say enough times. That is like, yes, books and blogs and websites are a good place to start, but usually books and blogs and websites are citing other research that you need to go find that other research that they're citing and cite that yourself. Because I have read some papers that are kind of like book report summaries of maybe 3 or 4 books, and it keeps coming back to citing this book, this book, this book, this book, and it's like, well, I could just go read that book. So along these lines of how to follow the bibliographic trail, I want to bounce back to PubMed and kind of give you an example of that. So let's go back. What I was going to do is actually, we could do it on any article, but since I was going to go back to the same example we were doing, that Alzheimer's article we found. So we found it by, I didn't like save it or anything, but oops. I want to go back to that one review article we found on Alzheimer's. Yeah, I was just going to go to one of these and then, oh, not that one. Sorry, I should go slower so you, let's just pick one. Well, actually, let's just pick this one. It doesn't matter. The dormant blood microbiome in chronic inflammatory diseases. Let's just pick a review article where we can see the full text. And I'll explain to you what I mean about following the trail. So you might read be reading this review article, and let's say, so let's just randomly kind of pick something to pick out of here. I don't know. And I don't know if this is a good article or not, but let's just start right in the introduction and let's just see what happens. So let's see. I'm going to just start in the second paragraph here. Over the years, a variety of diseases that were previously considered non-communicable have been found to have a microbial component. The role of H. pylori is a well-known example. So just say, for example, like, oh, that looks like a study that actually relates to my topic, and I want to go, I might want to talk about that too. So let's go find that one. Okay, so that was in the Lancet, 1984. Usually, this will directly link you to it, but I mean, you of course could type in the name of the article in PubMed to find it separately. And so now, okay, here's the article about how this infection, this bacteria, causes peptic ulcers, okay? And I'm going to use that to help support the point I'm making in my paper. So I'm going to cite this article, okay? So if I'm going to say, oh, you know, it was discovered in such and such that bacteria can cause ulcers, I'll cite this article, not the review article. See what I'm saying? That's how you follow the bibliographic trail. Before I give another example of bibliographic trail, do you guys have any questions about this? I want to give a kind of separate example if you're like reading a blog article. So let's just go to Google. Let's just say, okay, I want to find...
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
When you look at these articles, some are pretty old. How far back would it be okay to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, there's not an absolute cut and dried on that. Really, I mean, within the past 5 years would be considered recent. Past 10 years, definitely like reasonable. However, like some of these concepts, you might have like one or two that go way back. Like they, you know, like this one I just popped up, 1984. You might have one or two that are really old because you're making a point like this, where it's like, oh, this stuff has been studied forever. It goes way back to this study. So in that case, it makes sense to cite something that's really old. But it is definitely preferable to cite as much more recent stuff as you can. And so, but again, there is definitely kind of a gray area. And so, I mean, I would say try to keep it within 10 years mostly.
Okay, thanks.
But when it comes up on PubMed, it comes up as most recent first. So that's
okay.
Yeah. So let's go back to our Alzheimer's and say, I just want to find out, what are people online talking about? Are there any good blogs talking about this? Is anyone, you know, since I didn't really find small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and Alzheimer's on PubMed, is anyone talking about it in a blog or something? So let's just put that into Google and see what we get. Okay. Alzheimer's disease and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Okay, so I want to see something that looks like someone wrote a blog about this. Okay, yeah, I clicked on this earlier. So this one kind of looks interesting. Dr. Perlmutter wrote, gut inflammation affects the brain. So let's see what he says. Okay, so Okay, so he's talking about Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, neurodegenerative things, in the process inflammation. Okay, which can begin in the gut. Oh, that's what I want to talk about in my paper. Okay. Affects downstream mechanisms. In a submission to the Journal of Neuroinflammation, researchers reported this experiment. And so he's explaining a specific experiment, and he's summarizing it, and he's saying, oh, the implications are breathtaking. It tells us inflammatory bowel disease compromises cognitive function. Okay, so let's say I want to talk about this study in my paper. And so I say something about, oh, in these mice, and it shows, I don't know, I'm going through this fast, but this study showed inflammation is linked to cognitive function. And then what is going to be my source? Am I going to say I read this at drperlmutter.com? Yes or no?
I would say no.
Okay. Why? Where could you go to find what study you really should cite?
Well, I would be hoping that he would have somewhere where he got his information.
Yeah, so usually you kind of look at the bottom and you're like, oh, did he put the name of the original study? No. But what he did, another way that it's sometimes done, he put the link to that study. So we'll click on that. Oh, here's the study. There's the actual title of it. There's the journal. There are the authors. There's the date. So now I can find this in PubMed probably. So I'm just going to go back. I'm going to copy the title of that study and see if I can find it in PubMed. Put it in there. There it is. So now I've read what Dr. Perlmutter said about it. I've kind of read his assessment. I see why it fits in with my topic. I'm going to talk about it in my paper, but I'm not going to tell anybody that I've heard about it from Dr. Perlmutter. I'm just going to reference this original study. And that's what is following the bibliographic trail. Got it? Okay. So,
But what if in some articles you will not find anything?
if you don't have if they're just like a blog article and they're just talking and not referencing anything? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
So, it's probably not reliable if they're not referencing anything.
I actually recently paid kind of a lot of attention to it, and I don't know, I scrolled through, I believe like 10 websites, and none of those articles had any links or references of any kind of source.
I would not use it, and I would not consider it reliable.
Yeah.
I mean, it might give you some ideas that you might think, well, let me look into, like, oh, I never thought of this concept, and then see if you can actually find any research to support it. But I don't know if they're, or the other thing you could do, like, say they are kind of proposing a new idea that's interesting, like, well, I don't know.
What I tried once actually, because there was like right below where I was trying to look up any references, there was like link to the Facebook. So I actually asked that lady. I was like, I kind of like the article, but where's your source coming from? And she answered.
Okay.
So that I thought was helpful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess sometimes you can try and track it down, exactly. But I guess the other thing I was going to say, like, maybe there's an idea that you think really is kind of relevant, but you can't actually find research on it. You can include that in your paper, in your discussion, and basically cushion it as like, although to my knowledge, there's no research yet published on this. However, it has been suggested that maybe, that maybe, yeah, overgrowth of that SIBO does such and such. I don't know. I can't find an example, but you can cushion it by saying it has been suggested that this idea, and then you can reference, say, that blog where they were talking about it. So you're saying, you know, this person suggested this idea, but you're not making any claim that you found any research on that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. If you think it is like worthy of including.
I see.
Let's see. Okay. I'll jump back here. I want to be cognizant of the time and finish up on time, but just a couple quick things I want to cover, I think. So this is talking about the different kind of levels. And I say here, don't source cite Wikipedia. Wikipedia, again, is a great place to get ideas. But whatever ideas you get from there, try and go to the source to cite, because Wikipedia is like anybody can write on there. Anybody can say whatever they want. So it's not considered a reliable or, yeah, really credible source. Unless you can go, you know, usually it does have really good information. It's just not something you want to cite in a research paper. So this is a list of, you know, some references to use. Of course, I keep going back to PubMed. Google Scholar is another one where you can find articles in a similar way as you can on PubMed. Of course, libraries. You can use textbooks. Websites, I would say, again, like websites are what I call secondary, and or whatever. They're secondhand, tertiary. But websites, you want to try and go to whatever source they're citing. Same with books. Practitioners, this is also definitely an option. Like you can interview practitioners and include that, and they can be a source. And that's, you know, you can definitely say, according to Dr. So-and-so who specializes in perimenopause, she has found excellent results with such and such. And then your source is just that doctor. You're just saying this is what that doctor says. And that's acceptable as well. Talking about using people. And then again, I did say your own research, and it is also acceptable to include case studies of something, you know, a client that you've seen, or a kind of brief story about your own personal experience is also acceptable to include. Gathering information. Okay, so as far as kind of keeping track as you go, in the end, you're going to have to be able to put in a reference for certain statements. And so you have to keep track of where you're collecting the information from. So like if you're, say, kind of just jotting a bunch of notes in a notebook and not keeping track of where you read that, you're going to end up in kind of a bind at the end, because you're going to go to write something up and say, but I have no idea where I read this. So I have no idea who to give credit to for this information. So, I mean, it is helpful now because we all are just using computers, and you're probably using a Word document to take notes. But like you need to have some way of saying, of kind of noting to yourself, like, okay, this statement came from study X, Y, or Z, and keep track of that. Now, to some extent, you have to come up with your own method of keeping track as you go. I have never gotten into really teaching students about using reference manager software, but it is something I could mention briefly here at the end in a minute in case you're interested. But it could be as simple as, you know, just writing down, as you write a note and then in parentheses write the last name of the author and the date. So you'd put, you know, Thompson 2014, or you might just take a bunch of notes on one article all in one section and title that section Thompson 2014, just somehow to keep track so you're able to cite it correctly when you're done. Also, so it says here on the blue, point number 2, use quotations. This is also, I think, even as you're starting to take notes on stuff, it's helpful for you to keep track of what are you writing down that's a direct quote from that article, and what are you just kind of summarizing as you go. Because again, in your end product, if you're directly quoting a study, something they say word for word, technically you should have it in quotes. If you're summarizing something they found, you don't have to have it in quotes. But if you're not keeping track of what's a direct quote and what's not as you're taking notes, you won't even know in the end. So, and you know, this is not something I'm a huge stickler on, and I don't like go pull up all the full text and like double check that you've quoted things correctly. Like, I'm not going to go crazy on that, but technically, yeah, if you quote something, it should be in quotes, and so somehow you need to be keeping track. Okay. This is kind of the end of the actual, I think, presentation stuff, is just talking about the big picture. You've all chosen your topics, and some of you have done your outlines. And then, yeah, it's all about gathering information, keeping track of the information as you gather it, and then finally, actually, writing it up into something readable. So we're not quite at that point yet. Let's see. I guess I can briefly kind of cover what's expected in the outline, since some of you have not done that yet. It's pretty well detailed, I think, in your syllabus about what I expect to see on the outline, but basically I can kind of just talk through it real fast. So kind of a tentative title, the introduction, you really just, introduction, I'll come back to that in our next workshop of really kind of how to structure an introduction. But just basically acknowledge that you're going to have an introduction and what your final thesis statement is going to be. Because usually kind of the main point of your paper you state in the last sentence of your introduction. Like, in this paper, I am going to talk about how nutrition affects dental health in children, whatever. So state your thesis. That's the answer to your question, basically. And then I just need you to at least list kind of what the main sections of your paper are going to be. That's this big Roman numerals too. And for each, at least a couple of subsections or evidence that you're going to include in that section. So I just need to see at least 2 or 3 kind of main body sections, and then if kind of what topics you're going to cover in each of those or subsections under those. This one, so it lists like 3 main sections and then the conclusion. I'm pretty lenient on how detailed or not the outline is. I just kind of want to see the big picture idea of the structure of your paper. And I do need to see some references, I think 6 references submitted with the outline. And those can be books and websites. Those don't have to be like all the original stuff when you submit your outline. This is old slide. Okay, that's old slide. All the dates are old. Okay, it's 8 o'clock and I want to be cognizant of your time and not take any extra time. The only kind of side note that I mentioned there, if anyone is interested on staying on for 5 more minutes, I'm happy to talk to you about reference management software that costs about $50 and will save your life. Is anybody interested?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. I missed a question. Suzanne had asked, what do you do if there are so many articles, even in the filtered area? I'm sorry I missed that. That was when we were on PubMed. So that probably means you need to change your search terms because your search terms are probably too broad. and yeah, trying to look through 300 results is not useful. So yeah, you probably just need to play around with trying different words in the search box that are more specific. Okay, so briefly, just kind of to make you aware, because this is probably one of the most challenging things, is when I say, oh, keep track of your references. What I want to just show you is one way, one option, if you're interested, what I use for all of my writing to keep track of my references. There are a couple of them. One is called EndNote, which I've never ever learned. I personally use something that is called Bookends. I'm going to open it for you and show you. Bookends is made by Sony Software. I'll put that up here. So it's called Bookends. It's made by Sony Software. It costs like $50 one-time fee. So it's not really a huge investment, and then you don't have to continue to pay for a license or anything. I've had this probably for 3 years. And their customer service is amazing. But so it's a $50 investment, but this is what it looks like. So just real quick overview, and if anyone kind of really wants to get it and needs a little tutoring session in this, I can do that another time. But just to give you an idea of what it does, this is all calcium stuff. Anyway, it actually has a way for you, it goes to an online search where you can directly search PubMed through Bookends. It just connects you to the internet. So it's like you're searching PubMed like you would anything. We'll do the same thing anyway.
Sarah?
Yes.
I'm still stuck on your Dave Perlman's thing, so I can't see the screen where I don't know why.
Oh, shoot.
I don't know if I touched something.
Is anyone else having that problem?
No.
No, I can see it.
I am so sorry. I have no idea.
Okay, well, I might have to get some extra tutoring. Okay.
Okay, so what you're able to do in a reference management software is essentially find the references, and I find them there on PubMed. Okay, this is one that I want to save, right? And so let me close this so it's not in the way. And so, you'll get to learn how to use it, but basically I click a button over here that says, yes, I want to save it in my file. I import it to my file, and it shows up over here in my, in this file that I've saved. Well, this was a project I was doing on osteoporosis, but in any case, that article I just found is now saved in my list of references. Okay, so you might end up with this. I have 83 in here. That's a little crazy, but however many references you end up kind of finding for your project will all be saved in this file, in this folder, file folder or whatever. And what you can do with that is you can, first of all, kind of, see the list. You can organize, you can see them by what's most recent or whatever. Each one is going to have a web link here that will link you to the web page where you can sometimes get the free text. Anyway, I'm going to go back to Bookends. And the nice thing is you can, it actually connects over with Word, Microsoft Word. So there's a couple ways you can do this, but like if you're putting in your footnoted references, let's say I'm going to cover how to do the footnotes and stuff later, but say I'm going to insert a reference as an endnote. Okay, I'm in Word. I'm going back and forth from Word to Bookends. Now, this is the reference I want to be there. So I'm going to copy that citation, and it's going to show up in my Word document there, perfectly formatted as a citation in my footnote of my Word document. And so Bookends automatically talks to Microsoft Word. And or even if you don't do it that way, there's a listing under here. So this is the study we just found on microbiome neurodegenerative. And here it's formatted as a citation to just put into my paper. I can cut and paste that also. So anyway, it's a way basically to save all the studies that you're looking at, and then also a way for it to actually format them for your list of references in your bibliography. I'll come back to talking about all of like formatting your bibliography, et cetera, in future workshops, so don't get too worried right now. But if you do want to look into a way to save all your references in a nice tidy place, I would say you might want to look at bookends. You don't have to do that. You totally can write this paper without using a reference manager software. That's totally a like side note FYI if you're interested. So, okay. Any other questions for tonight?
No.
Are you guys okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you. This was helpful.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll be doing another workshop on February 11th. I actually don't even know what I'm talking about yet, but I'll figure it out by then. And in the meantime, all of you just yeah, feel free to email me with any questions you have, and we will be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.